Keek on the mic, keek on the mic. Keek on the mic, keek on the mic. People, this the intro. Sacramento, California, born and raised. And Antelope is where I spend most of my days. Talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down. Bear down.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. Like always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. So a pretty fun topic for you guys today right here on Keek on the Mic, as the report out of Chicago is this: Teven Jenkins loves the new Bears offense. And I know what you guys are already thinking. Well, Keek, a lot of players have said that they love Luke Getsy's new offense. But let me just continue with today's episode anyway. Much like a lot of the players, right, this year, Teven Jenkins is in uncertain waters because obviously they're learning a new offense under Luke Getsy. And Jenkins appeared on the No Name Football podcast with Olin, Kreutz, and Jason Mckie to discuss his current status and a bunch of other topics. And during the podcast, Kreutz also asked him about his impressions of the new Chicago Bears offense under Luke Getsy. And without giving away too much information about the new offense under Luke Getsy, Jenkins says that he loves it because it's much more up-tempo and player-friendly. These are exact words that Teven Jenkins had to use about the new Chicago Bears offense. I think it's player-friendly. That's what I think it is, and it's very fast tempo. That's the two things I love. I'm not trying to give out too much about it. I love it because it's different from what we were doing last year. It's a lot more player-friendly, which I like, which everybody likes, really, especially the O-line. Bears fans, what is the one thing that you noticed about what Teven Jenkins had to say? If you just missed what I said on the podcast, I'm going to repeat what Teven Jenkins said on the podcast. I love it because it's different from what we were doing last year. A lot of people, that would just go right over their head. That is Teven Jenkins in a very nice way, dissing Matt Nagy and Matt Nagy's scheme. And we'll talk a little bit more about that certain topic a little bit later in the podcast. But it's definitely a positive sign that Teven Jenkins and a lot of players are buying in to what Luke Getsy is offering in this new offense. Obviously, we've talked about Luke Getsy's scheme a lot and what he's offering. It's the Shanahan wide zone scheme. Obviously, it's going to benefit a lot of players. We've talked about Darnell Mooney. Obviously, Justin Fields. I think it can benefit a lot of the guys on the offensive line, like Cody Whitehair, Teven Jenkins, right? Lucas Patrick. He's obviously played in the system before. So it can benefit a lot of players. But just because you bring a new scheme doesn't mean players will buy into that scheme. So it's really nice to continuously hear that players are actually buying in to what Luke Getsy is bringing over in this new offense. But like I said, something that I noticed is that one little piece of information is that he likes it because it's different from what they were doing last year. And obviously, he isn't the first person to kind of throw shade at that Matt Nagy offense either. Justin Fields also expressed his opinions on last year's offense, citing the lack of identity or cohesive plan that led to too much inconsistency. And this has been going on all offseason. Multiple players that actually played under Matt Nagy in that offense have come forward, and without being disrespectful or being rude, they just said, hey, it just wasn't a good fit for our skill set. Now you look at a guy like Luke Getsy that, once again, like Teven Jenkins said, it's player friendly. He's going to work around his player skill set, which is what a coach should do. But obviously, Teven Jenkins is not the first player to come forward and talk about Matt Nagy's scheme. And obviously, players are frustrated about how they were used and Matt Nagy's offense, and rightfully so. And when you're kind of just looking at Teven Jenkins, right, and why he was frustrated, and the reason why he was frustrated, because in Nagy's scheme, he never did enough to keep defenses off balance, right? Blockers weren't allowed to be the aggressors. Remember when you look at the Minnesota Vikings game, right, when Teven Jenkins was just trying to protect Justin Fields, for example. You had Jermaine Ifedi trying to pull him off and say, hey, no, we don't need that. We don't need that. But we were a losing football team. All Teven Jenkins was trying to do is protect his quarterback. And I kind of like offensive linemen like that. I like offensive linemen that have that edge and that nastiness about them, like Teven Jenkins. And another thing, they weren't allowed to set the tone. And for someone like Teven Jenkins, right, with this violent nature, that could be really frustrating because basically Matt Nagy was like, hey, I'm not going to use what you're good at. I'm not going to let you do what you're good at. I'm not going to let you be that nasty, violent blocker, right? So he took away what Teven Jenkins did best, which was his athletic ability to get to that second level and his nastiness and his violentness in his blocking. So I can understand why Teven Jenkins would throw a little shade on the podcast talking about how frustrating it basically was to play under that Matt Nagy scheme. But now when you look at it, now we're moving on from Matt Nagy, right? And now we're talking about Luke Getsy's scheme. Now he's in a system known for being a run-first system. So it is very easy to understand why he's ready to embrace this new offense that Luke Getsy's bringing to Chicago and why he's absolutely in love with this new Chicago Bears offense. But this also brings a lot of pressure on Teven Jenkins as well. Obviously, we drafted him in the second round last year. There was a lot of people that thought he could have possibly been a first-round pick in last year's draft. And obviously, we know now why he wasn't a first-round pick because obviously he had that massive back issue where it allowed him, he had to have surgery. He was out for basically half the season. So now I understand why he dropped. But there's a lot of pressure on Teven Jenkins now because this is the absolute perfect offense for him. And obviously, coming out of college, experts believed that his best fit was in an offense that emphasized the run, and that's something that would show off that nastiness and that power that Teven Jenkins kind of possesses right in his game. And the Chicago Bears have put him in that position to succeed. Once again, we go back. Luke Getsy is very player-friendly. He's going to put his players in the best positions to succeed, and this definitely puts Teven Jenkins in the best position to succeed. And when you look at the Luke Getsy scheme that he's bringing over to Chicago, the wide zone will allow Teven Jenkins to get after it and take advantage of his athletic skill set, which is really going to be really fun to see for Teven Jenkins. But the question is now, and this is where today's episode of Kick on the Mic gets kind of interesting. The question is now, when you're looking at Teven Jenkins, right, where will the Bears use him? Obviously, during minicamp, one of the biggest storylines during the mandatory minicamp was Teven Jenkins got demoted to the second team. Obviously, the Bears tested him out at left tackle. They looked at him at the right tackle. But then after looking at him at both of those positions, they put him on the second team, which I'm not going to stress about that certain instance too much, but that's definitely something to look at. That's definitely a big storyline going into training camp. But I truly feel that once those pads come on during the training camp practices, the Bears should know where they need to use Teven Jenkins, because in my personal opinion, I truly would be shocked if the Bears didn't use Teven Jenkins in some sort of capacity on this offensive line this season. I feel that he is way too talented to leave out of the mix. And overall, I truly feel that he is the perfect fit for this offense. And I think he knows it too. Obviously, he made those comments on those podcasts that he's ready to embrace this new challenge. He loves what Luke Getsy and this offense is going to do for him and a bunch of his teammates. And I agree with him. I think it's a perfect fit for a lot of players on this football team, including Teven Jenkins. But obviously, Teven Jenkins has to go out there and earn it and prove that he is the man that can play that right tackle position. I know there's been a lot of experts saying that coming out of college, he may translate to a guard position in the NFL, but that's what training camp is for. I truly feel that once you put those pads on, that nastiness and power will definitely show up. Obviously, when you're in the mandatory minicamp period where you're not don't have the pads on, you can't make any contact with your teammates, it's kind of hard to see where guys can fit, right? But I promise you that what you saw on tape of Teven Jenkins coming out of college will translate when he puts those pads on. I feel like he's fully healthy right now. I think he's pretty much 100% ready to go. And I think once he puts those pads on, he will show you why that he needs to be the starting right tackle of the Chicago Bears offensive line. But overall, the Bears need to hopefully try to get him back in the mix, and he needs to be starting somewhere on the offensive line. Yes, if he doesn't earn it, then yeah, maybe he can be running with the second teams, but at the same time, I think that would be a huge bust for the Chicago Bears if he is not starting somewhere on the offensive line once the season begins for the Chicago Bears. But before I let you guys go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms, and make sure you share this episode of Kick on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, I'll be back for an all-new Bears podcast right here on Kick on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic.